I can't believe I missed it again because I was watching cartoons. Appreciate you, man. Hey, cartoons are everything. Like, don't worry about this. Like, I'll post this. You watch cartoons. Um, Matt Billoff, I love you too, man. You stay strong, dude. Um, but Midwife does not include herself in the denizens of Deep Nest. She places herself outside of that, which is really interesting to see in that bit of dialogue, because I've always kind of thought of her as a dweller of Deep Nest because that's where we find her, but because she's directly telling us that Hera and her people, we can draw the conclusion that Midwife isn't from Deep Nest. And then it gets really interesting. And we've got to bring in kind of a mildly secondary character to talk about this. But Midwife, if you're wearing the Weaver charm, goes on to tell you that you've raided the Weaver Den and that the Weavers used to write down our history on their silk. And so she places herself somewhere in Hollow Nest, our history. But we know she's not placing herself in Deep Nest. So if she's not placing herself with Deep Nest and with Hera, and we know from her name she's the Midwife, where would that put her? And we have to kind of surmount that would put her with the Pale King. And that she would be the Midwife to the White Lady. And there's a reason I kept her towards the end here, because this one's a big one, and I don't know if anybody's actually talked about it. I haven't seen this. Midwife's from Mexico. Maybe Taco, I don't know. But the only other person we ever talk about with birth in the game is the White Lady. And so that would give Midwife a direct link, possibly to the Abyss. And as we said, the Abyss was never completed. We know there were supposed to be more entrances and exits, specifically in Deep Nest. And what better way to challenge your kids than to send them through a literal fucking hellhole? I love Deep Nest because it's dark, it's scary, I love spiders. It was really cool to play through. It's a fucking monster if you fall into it, though, and you're not prepared for that shit. But if there was another exit into Deep Nest from the Abyss, then Midwife was there to greet those vessels. And that becomes really interesting when you look at the implications of that. Because Midwife greets you, and she doesn't act like it's a surprise that there's a vessel there. When we meet Dung Defender and we dream nail him, I think his line is something along like, oh, so there were others. He knew about the vessels, but he didn't know about how many. But she doesn't seem surprised. In fact, she seems as fucking hungry every time we talk to that bitch. Get her a goddamn sandwich. So there's more going on with Midwife than meets the eye. She's not a denizen. She's not a citizen of Deep Nest. She doesn't belong with Hera and that brood. But she does place herself within Hollow Nest. And I found that really interesting. And that's why I wanted to keep her back towards the end. But to end this whole thing, I've got to talk about Godseeker. Godseeker is by far the most interesting piece of fuck we have in this entire game. A voidy sandwich, yeah! I got way too high before going to Deep Nest and it was a fucking nightmare. Bro, I could only imagine Deep Nest high. Holy shit, that would be a nightmare. Ooh. That would be scary. But we've got to talk about Godseeker, and we've got to talk about what Godseeker means and really get into it. Because Godseeker holds a key piece in my entire argument that the Radiance is not the infection, and she holds an entire fucking area in her mind. When we find her in the junk pit, she's locked in a sarcophagus, which is unlocked by a small key. Most of us had to go fight the Pale Lurker to get that fucking small key. Not a big deal. Doesn't matter. What does matter is that we unlock her and that we unlock Godhome. We're going to finish this drink real fast. I'm going to set it down and then we're going to talk about this one because I want you guys to understand like the importance of this one is beyond all of the other importances we have discussed tonight. Because the importance of Godseeker literally throws everything we think we know about Hollownest upside down and on its fucking head. And it will be a look deeper, and it will be coming shortly. I'm actually shooting for a look deeper once a week for Patreon, so you guys will have that fucking hand-delivered, signed and sealed. I don't know if the Patreons are here tonight, but I actually talk with the Patreons. They shape where everything's going. So I've got to thank them first and foremost before we start to wrap all of this up. You guys are amazing. Thank you for helping me create the content that you guys want to see. Thank you for helping me with the Look Deeper series. There is something mildly interesting about this video tonight. We'll see if you guys noticed it or not. Like I said, I like details, so let's see how many details you paid attention to. But my Patreons, you guys are fucking phenomenal. Thank you very much. I will put a Patreon link down in the comments. I will also drop the link to the PayPal if you want to do it one time instead of doing the Patreon. Guys, this takes a lot of time. This takes a lot of effort, a lot of research, and it's not just thrown together. Like I said, there's whiteboards be off camera you can't see with notes on them. There's emails on the tablet. There's a laptop running back here. Obviously, the game's running in the background. The camera we're using, all of it costs money. And I'm doing it to bring you guys something I hope you enjoy and I hope you like, and I hope brings a little bit more enjoyment and love out of the game that we all enjoy. If you guys like this, please consider helping me out. I would like to do this. I'm actually talking to a YouTube creator as well to possibly have them cover one of the Look Deepers. Maybe even possibly launch the Look Deeper YouTube channel. Obviously, we launched the page. We're looking at launching a YouTube channel as well. But I can't do it without you guys' support. I'm just going to be straight up honest with you. This takes a lot more time than I realized it would just putting this on. Obviously, drinks cost money, equipment costs money, and so if it's something you guys want to do, I would be super happy to. I talk to all of my Patreons on a daily basis. Not on a daily basis, but whenever I release something new, you get a direct message from me. You get instant access to all of the Look Deepers, you get first exclusives, and you get to help shape this content. So, nice PC background. Yeah, background, we're obviously not streaming on Twitch, so I can't do a green screen. Facebook doesn't allow green screens, or if they do, I couldn't find it in the rules where they did. All of this is pretty basic right now, but we would like to take it somewhere further. But with that all being said, like I said, it'll all be down in the comments. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. Let's wrap this up with our last and final NPC, and that's Godseeker, and I want to try and change the way you've thought about this entire story. Because throughout the entire story, we have all believed that the Radiance was the infection. And the Moss Prophet tells us that light bound as nature restricted, and it plagues us and it haunts us. However, we've also seen that we can draw parallels, and that Team Cherry tells us everything along the way if we're paying attention to those details. And there's certain details that we can draw between the Radiance and other characters that may not mean she's the infection. And Godseeker is one of those huge ones. In Godhome, we find the Hall of Gods. And we find all of our bosses that we fought along the way. I have no idea what that noise was. But we find all of the gods that we fought along the way. And if you've ascended each pantheon, we get to the Pantheon of Hallownest, and we ascend that all the way to Abzerad, which is unique that they changed the name. And this is where Godseeker really comes in play, is that Godseeker knows about the Radiance. But we have been told and led to believe the entire time that just knowing about the Radiance and seeing her in our dreams and in our mind would mean infection. Yet here's a bug that not only knows about the Radiance, but literally has captured the Radiance in her mind and is not infected. That's really impressive. And that either means the Radiance is less powerful than Godseeker, or the Radiance isn't the infection. And those are really the two conclusions we can draw. Because if she is less powerful than Godseeker, then Godseeker can contain the infection and should throughout all of Hallownest. But she doesn't. And if she, being the Radiance, isn't the infection, then Godseeker would have nothing to worry about. And we can take one of those off the table real fast. We know that Godseeker worships the Radiance as a god, as the god. She believes that the Radiance is the highest god. And so she has left her home and made a pilgrimage to find the Radiance. And that says something really big. That if here's a bug that knows about the Radiance and can have the absolute Radiance in her mind and not become infected, that the Radiance is not the infection. Godseeker captured the Radiance but doesn't act like Godseeker is stable. Godseeker is completely stable. Look at her behind me. Like, there's no evidence of instability with Godseeker. About the only thing you get with Godseeker is some fucking ego about how big that goddamn shell has grown and how massive she looks. But she's captured the Radiance. And again, we can find in those clues that maybe the Radiance isn't the infection. And we can find this a couple ways. Once we beat the 3 pantheons, what is it, like Warrior, Artist, Sage? That first one may be wrong. We get the Pantheon of the Night. And at the top of the Pantheon, we find the Pure Vessel. Not the Hollow Knight, the Pure Vessel. Devoid of infection. We can then again draw that same parallel to the last 3 we beat. We have all 3 Nail Masters and the Nail Sage Sly without infection. We save Sly from infection. So everybody so far at the top of every pantheon has not been infected. And then we get the Pantheon of Hallownest. And instead of getting the Radiance, we get absolute Radiance. Instead of getting Hollow Knight, we get Pure Vessel. They have changed these characters. The Radiance is infected. The Radiance has become infected. The Radiance is literally ground fucking zero for that infection. But not here, because she is absolute. She is pure. This is the big key. We have a bug who knows about the Radiance who's not infected. But she doesn't know about the Radiance. She knows about absolute Radiance. A bug that we can show through parallels should not be infected. So knowing about the Radiance is not enough to get you infected. You must know about only the Radiance in its infected form. So that way the infection can spread. The Radiance isn't the infection. Something else is. We never see